friends. Welcome to this episode of the Cutting Room Floor, a podcast of Grace Church, where we talk about all the things that didn't make it into the sermon on Sunday or things we might have said differently. My name's Larry. I'm one of the pastors here, and I am so glad to be joined by Pastor Casey today, who was up at the Cape campus. I'm especially glad to be here because I've been having to stay at home the last couple of days. Brittany started a new job, and I've worked from home with the kids, and adult conversation.
Adulting is kind of needed right now.
I needed this. So
good. Well, I'm glad to be here with you.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, you did a great job on Sunday at the Cape campus, wrapping up our playlist sermon series. This was just a fun series.
It was.
Like, we got to all talk about songs that were meaningful to us. I talked last week on the podcast. I got to preach that sermon 6 different times because I was at all three campuses. But it was fun because it was so personal, like something that was meaningful to us. So you got to wrap the whole thing up for us, and you went with the song "Holy Ground."
I sure did.
Do you think people were surprised that you went with an older song?
They might have been. They might have just expected me to pull out like a contemporary from the 2020s or something.
Maybe.
But I don't know, but no.
But no.
Yeah, no.
So what inspired you to pick Holy Ground? Because you probably could have picked any number of songs, right? Like that was something we all had in common is we could have gone a bunch of different ways. What made you land on this song in particular?
Well, I knew, I guess, in March or so that we were going to be doing this series and that I was going to have to choose a song. And I was already a little worried and anxious about it, like 4 months ahead of time or whatever it was. And so I was thinking, I really don't know what I'll do, but we'll figure it out when it gets closer, you know? And then I do this strange thing. So my dad passed over 2 years ago, and he passed at 4 a.m. And just because that was a huge moment for me and for him, I do a little vigil once a year at that time on the day he passed. And so I got up in April at 4 a.m. One day and had this time with him and just remembered that whole thing that we went through, you know, and just talked with him. And during that time, the song Holy Ground came to me because I had this history with it, with my healing over my dad's death. And so it became special to me over the last couple years. And it just came to me as I was kind of talking to Dad, oh my gosh, of course, this is a song I need to talk about.
Yeah.
So,
that's beautiful. And you talked about singing this when you were younger, and Mom and Dad singing this together. Mom said she'd lost count of how many times they had done this song at church. What do you think? You filled us in about like kind of the history of the song. Like I chuckled at the pastor's son procrastinating till the last minute. Like,
of course,
right?
That's the way of it, right?
Like we've all had Saturday night special sermons.
Yeah.
Like it's Saturday night, we don't know what we're gonna say.
Oh my gosh, Sunday's coming.
Right. So Saturday night he's plucking this out. But it's a song that's connected for several generations now.
Yeah.
Like, so walk us through a little bit of why you think that is.
Well, it's a beautiful melody, first of all. I mean, it's just kind of a soaring, you know, chorus. And also, it hits home. You know, we all want to be in that place where we feel like we're on holy ground, and we can feel God's presence all around us, and that joy and that peace is coming to us that we long for. I think it's that wonderful place. It's almost heaven-like, you know, that heaven is here in a sense.
The Celtic Christians called it a thin place where heaven and earth meet. And,
right.
So you talked about the mountaintop experiences, and we all long for those. And we can you know, plant a flag at different places that we knew were our mountaintop experiences. What are some of your mountaintop moments that you could point to, whether with the song or not, that you can just say, this was a mountaintop moment?
Yeah, I was thinking about this earlier today, because there's different times and different kinds of mountaintops and everything, but a couple that stuck out to me are, one, it was my first year of seminary. And it's so funny, often my mountaintops come in the middle of a wilderness, kind of like I talked about. It's like, and that's why they're so awesome, because it's like, oh my gosh, I see God suddenly. Thank you. You showed up. I'm so grateful. So that was kind of how I felt that first year of seminary, pastor school. I really didn't know if that's where I needed to be or not. And I had a year of not having a full-time job before I went to get my degree at seminary. And it was really scary. I was 27 and I thought, oh my gosh, here I've got 4 more years of, trying to get by and not having a full-time job. I'll be 31 when I graduate and I won't have a full-time job.
31 seems so young now.
I know now it's like, oh baby.
Yeah.
But, back then it was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough.
Yeah.
I wanted to have things together and have my life together and be responsible and all of that. And it just seemed like I couldn't get there somehow. I just kept on walking through mud. And so kicking and screaming, I went to seminary hoping that God would show up. And I told God, you better show up within the first semester or I'm leaving.
I happen to think Wilmore's a great place for that to happen.
It is. And it's amazing how God answers those prayers. But God did show up that first semester. It was wonderful in a lot of ways, and I could get into that, but I won't. But the mountaintop came by the end of the year, where suddenly I had gone from not having hardly anything in my life at that point to suddenly I had gotten the music intern position at Asbury for the entire chapel. So I got to just do free reign, coordinate the chapel worship. And they had also asked me to apply for the chaplain position for the dorms.
Okay.
For the single dorms. And so I became the chaplain for the women and the music intern for the chapel, and I started to be able to do worship nights there as well and kind of create those from nothing.
Yeah.
And so it was like suddenly I was given all this leadership opportunity and was just in my sweet spot of what I loved to do, and I was just doing what I loved to do like every day, and I couldn't believe it. It was like a pinch me moment.
Yeah.
I just thought, I didn't ask for any of this. I didn't go seeking it out. It just came. And it was just a sign of kind of when you follow God, sometimes things just fall into place.
Yeah.
Maybe not always, but sometimes they do. And it's amazing. And I think no matter what, if you're following God, you're going to see his faithfulness some way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we use those mountaintop experiences to kind of mark milestones in our spiritual journey. So that was kind of a turning point for you. Why do you think those are so important to keep marking those milestones? Yeah.
I think they create our history with God. They create a history of our faith, and it's something that we can go back to. We learn different things from those experiences that just become part of us, that we just carry with us in our life with God, that maybe we don't even notice later on, but maybe we just have more of an assurance that somehow we're going to be all right, or we're not as worried, or different things like that. They change us. They transform who we are and how we think about God. We've seen God now in our actual lives. We haven't just read about it. We've actually experienced God's presence or move in our life, and so that's everything. Right?
And since we've seen that gives us something to cling to.
We can hold on to that.
Right. I know for me, like since we're talking about songs, there's certain songs that can take me back to a place, like sitting around a campfire at church camp, like with the people that were teaching me how to follow Jesus, like certain Rich Mullins songs, stuff like that.
Oh,
like I'm right back. I can smell the campfire.
You're speaking my heart language,
yeah,
Larry.
like, and those are milestone mountaintop moments for me. Like life isn't always that simple. Like hanging out with my friends, singing to Jesus. Yeah. But I can cling to those moments when life is hard.
Yeah.
So I think one of the gifts of your message is you pointed out the mountaintop moments, but we can't live on the mountaintop.
Right.
Like there is a lot of wilderness in between. So you contrasted the mountaintop moments with the wilderness periods, which are probably more frequent. So why are both of them so crucial to our faith, though?
Oh my gosh. Larry, you got good questions.
I know, I'm on.
You're on fire. Well, they both grow our faith in different ways. On the mountaintop, we see Jesus transfigured, for instance.
Okay.
We see holy ground, like viscerally. Oh my gosh, the burning bush is right here in front of me, right? Whatever that is for us. in the wilderness, we are with Jesus as he's tempted for 40 days, by the Spirit. Or not that by the Spirit, by the devil, but he's led by the Spirit there. And he's having to cling to his faith in a completely different way. Yeah. He's having to he's learning who he is. He's learning how much God loves him in that difficult time, and that God is with him and can sustain him even in the hard. So that's a whole nother learning and development of closeness with God. For someone to be with you when you're at your worst moment, or when you're going through your worst moment, there's something really intimate about that that you can't experience other than being in that hard time with that person. Yeah. And it's the same way with God, I think.
Again, I think that was the gift of what you said, is the mountaintops are great, and that is absolutely holy ground. But even in the wilderness, you're still on holy ground.
You're on holy ground because God's meeting you and feeding you with the ravens.
Right, he's in this mess with me. Yeah. And whether it's in the things of lament and in grief and glory, God is there, and that's still holy ground. I think we miss that sometimes because the mountaintop experiences are so happy and joy-filled, and now I'm in this place that I don't want to be. But we have this weird idea of blessedness in our culture that I'm blessed when things are good.
Right. Yes.
I'm just as blessed in the hard times because he's with me. Yeah. And I think you walked that line for us.
Yeah, I was trying to kind of point out that God is with us even in the obviously I was trying to point that out in the wilderness place, but we often, I think, feel like maybe I've done something wrong when I'm in the wilderness. Maybe it's my fault somehow, or why am I not experiencing God in the way that I wanted to, or whatever. And that's just not the case. God's present to us in every moment, whether we feel it or not. And sometimes in that moment, we just don't feel it. I believe there were moments when Jesus didn't feel it, when Jesus was struggling. And that's part of the walk of faith. It's not something that we have to escape, or that we even are told maybe sometimes that if we follow Jesus, we will just have all of those mountaintop moments. But the walk with Jesus is a cross too, and it's through a world that is hard. And he says, you're going to be in the world and it's going to be hard, but I've overcome the world and I'm with you throughout this whole thing. You're not alone. So,
and that's so important to know that he's with us in the wilderness and on the mountaintop, especially to know that in the wilderness. But what would you say to someone who's struggling to feel God's presence in the wilderness? They're in this stuck place. They know it's a wilderness, and they're not really feeling like God's with them. What kind of practical maybe advice would you give them?
Yeah, I immediately go to times in the past few years when I've felt that way, and the only thing I can do is share my own experience and what has helped me. So in those moments, there have been times when I've just sat on the ground and been like, well, I don't know what to do right now, and but there's a sense of waiting in that as well, of being like, well, I know that I don't feel this right now, but I'm not going to give up, I'm not going to just throw in the towel on this whole God thing because I don't feel God right now. I'm going to wait and hope and pray that he's going to show up at some point. And in those moments, the only thing I could really pray a lot of the time was help. Just help.
Which is like sometimes the best prayer that you can have. Right?
Yeah. And sometimes that was all I could do, is just ask for help and then do whatever else I needed to do that day, But then other practical things, I think sometimes we don't realize that God is so connected to the things we love, the things that give us life, and that he's created us in ways that, different things, different practices, different things give us life. So what brings you alive? Does going on a walk bring you alive? It's not just sitting in your room, reading the Bible and trying to really pray, even though those are good things. But sometimes you just need to take a walk. Or go to the beach, or go to a library.
You're talking my language.
You know what I mean? And not only that, but ask God to go with you. Yeah. God is going with you, but make yourself open to God. I want to share this with you. Will you reveal yourself to me in this? Yeah. And just see what happens. Another thing that is great is journaling. I know some people don't like that, but I'm just giving you what works for me.
Yeah.
What's worked for me. Journaling is great too, because you can just be totally honest and you can get it out there on the page. Just say whatever you need to say, and it's amazing how the Spirit can speak to you as you're writing out what you feel and what you're going through.
Yeah.
And then, of course, being in silence.
Yeah.
I remember it was a counselor that introduced silence to me when I was in seminary. And at the time, why would I just sit in silence?
Right,
Like,
right.
I am not praying, okay? I mean, I'm not achieving anything in prayer. I'm not saying anything to God. Like, this isn't real prayer, And I need to really get somewhere with God
Yeah.
in prayer. And so I just thought, this is kind of crazy. But I was really struggling. And so I would sit in silence sometimes for about just 5 minutes. And it was amazing, the peaceful thoughts that would come to my mind in just those 5 minutes. And they would help me take whatever next step I needed to take. They would improve my view of whatever situation it was. It's really interesting how that happens.
Yeah.
It's basically giving God space to be. To speak to you and
to help you see that every place you are has the potential of being holy ground.
Exactly.
Like, okay, we're here. Show me.
Yeah.
So I remember Henry Allen wrote in The Way of the Heart that silence and solitude are the furnace of transformation. And I remember that just being something that really struck with me. Like, okay, how is sitting in silence going to transform me? But it has time and time again, because Jesus has met me there, whether it's a good moment or a bad moment that I'm struggling in. He's met me there and changed me. That's holy ground.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the furnace of transformation he was talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, and when we talk about holy ground, it's not that everything's great. Like, we've talked about this, but I just want to hit that home. It's not experiencing or recognizing holy ground every day does not mean that our every day is wonderful.
Right.
It is just the fact that every moment is holy. That's a truth, because God is in every moment.
Because of His presence, yeah.
So that is something that we can receive as a comfort in the difficult times. It's not trying to make us feel like, oh, everything's fine.
Right.
It's something we can hold on to, and that can fill us with a greater sense of peace and purpose, even when we're walking through the hard time. So, yeah.
What about the role? So we've talked about kind of the individual pieces we can do. What's kind of the role of community in recognizing and experiencing holy ground moments and an awareness of holy ground? What role does community play in that?
Well, one thing we talk about is that as the church, we carry each other. So when I'm weak, you can carry me. And when you're weak, I can carry you. And I've thought about that in worship. There are times when I might just not be able to do much today in response to God. I might just be in that help place. But next to me, someone is singing out or praying out their faith. And that's leaking over to me and carrying me and raising me up. So we raise each other up in these moments. But then we all experience God in different ways, and we have different testimonies, different stories about how God has been faithful. And when we share that with each other, that builds our faith, that brings another perspective in. It helps us not just stay in the negativity.
Yeah.
It opens us up to other possibilities, other ways of thinking about whatever we're going through.
Yeah.
Other ways of paying attention to God and to what's happening, what potential is in our life at the moment. So yeah, community. We walk together.
Yeah.
In all of this.
So, and I think that's so important, because I need the spiritual discipline of silence and solitude, but sometimes I can get too much silence.
Oh, yeah.
And then I get in my head, and then I get into stinking thinking.
Yes.
And I need someone else to say, you're like honed in on just one piece of this, and the bigger picture is what God is doing in the midst of this, and what God wants to do in you that I can't always see because I'm stuck in that stinking thinking.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes you just need to have fun.
Yeah.
With your people,
too.
I mean, sometimes you just got to have fun and enjoy a moment.
Yeah.
Because we get too heavy.
Yes, absolutely. What are some upcoming things. I think you hit on them in your message. Things that are happening at Grace Church that will help people with this, recognizing holy ground moments.
Yeah. I'm excited to share about it. We've got our worship night coming up Wednesday, August 21st at 6:30, and there'll be free childcare. And we're just going to come and we're going to worship, but it's not just going to be all songs. We're also going to be guided in prayer moments, reflective moments. We'll intercede for the world, for ourselves, for the church. We'll receive communion together, which is a beautiful communal practice. We'll be blessed. We'll read scriptures. We'll have moments to listen, but also have moments to rejoice together and maybe even lament if you need to.
Yeah. So if you're listening, that's August 21st, 6:30 at the Cape Coral campus. But anybody that's part of Grace Church or in the area, if you want to come and worship with us, do that. We're just going to linger in God's presence and see what else.
Exactly. Yeah. So the next Wednesday, we've got our solitude course coming up.
So we just talked about this. Now we're going to do a whole course on solitude?
I
All
know.
right.
People are going to be like, what? I don't want to be by myself for a minute. Well, it can be a lot of different ways. And what I love about these courses by Practicing the Way, if you want to look it up, it's practicingtheway.org. And they are created by John Mark Comer and a team that he's built around him. He's a really great pastor and writer out from the Pacific Northwest. And these courses are very gentle, and that's what I love about it. Yeah. You can start wherever you are. It can be the smallest step, and you can really tailor it to your own life and how you can maybe practice this in the daily duties and craziness of what you're experiencing right now. So it's not a one-size-fits all thing, and it's very supportive. We sit together in certain groups, and we get to know each other over those 4 weeks, so talking about community. And it's a very honest and accepting and supporting group that we've had every single time.
It's awesome.
It's been beautiful.
So yeah, the fasting one's behind us. So if
we
you,
don't
if
have
you
to
skipped
fast
out on
this
fasting,
time. So feel free to eat however you want during the week. It's not going to affect that.
So I had just started here when you did the fasting course, and I just loved that it was like dinner provided. I'm like,
I
what?
know.
What is happening?
Well, because we have to break the fast together.
Gotcha.
And then we'll go and fast whenever anybody's decided that they're going to do that. We all did it at different times during the week. Some people did fast throughout that night too, but we had dinner available because that's part of community too, is eating together, and that was really important to those courses. So there will be free dinner and free childcare there as well. It's awesome. From 6 to 8, starting August 28th. 4 weeks.
Man, so that stuff's coming right up here.
It's coming up soon.
We've seen this over and over because these Practicing the Way courses have been really well attended.
Yeah.
Like there's a hunger for the simplicity, but also like I want to follow Jesus, not just in riding on my parents' coattails or whatever. Like we're seeing people want a deep and meaningful faith and grow that maturing side that we talk about around here, and that's just been awesome. So I can't encourage folks that are listening enough to participate in the Solitude course. Transformation happens in that. So as we wrap up, what's one key message or takeaway that you would want our listeners to take away from your Holy Ground message?
I'll just say it once again. This moment is holy. This moment has every potential in the world. To connect with God, to see a burning bush of some kind. We just become more and more aware. We just pay attention more and more and just ask God to show us. I feel like let's put it back on God.
Yeah.
God, reveal yourself to me.
Yeah.
I'm open. This moment's holy.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing with us, Casey.
Yeah.
If this episode's been helpful to you, give us a like and a share. However it is that you're watching, we'll be back next week. It's Vision Sunday across Grace Church. So we're just going to be kind of reminded of who we are and the way that we partner with God and all sorts of exciting things we're going to talk about at all 3 campuses this Sunday of things that are planned to help us accomplish the mission that God has given to us. So we'll be back next week to kind of break that down and talk through that. Hope you're having a good week, and we'll see you next time. God bless.
Bye.